All right, Rambam Sefer Misvot. Misvot Aseh, positive commandment, number Sadi Zayin, number 97 is what we're up to. Yesterday we finished speaking about the Mizvah of being the fact that you're tameh when you're in contact with a nevelah, with the carcass of an animal. And the Rambam went on to explain that when I say that it's a Mizvah, the Tum'ah is a Mizvah, don't misunderstand that. And he gave us an explanation, a clarification that's going to last now throughout this entire list of Misvot that we're going to read this morning. And so we'll repeat it so that we understand. The fact that Tum'ah is a Mizvah does not mean on one hand it's a Mizvah to become Tameh. And on the other hand, it doesn't mean that if you become Tameh, you're violating a Mizvah. It means that when you are in a situation where you do become tameh, that there is mizvah to then observe whatever procedure, status, protocol that the Torah set out. So you're saying that it's a mizvah, the tum'ah of nevelah is a mizvah. It means that whatever is incorporated in terms of the laws of someone who is tameh by virtue of contact, contracting tum'ah by virtue of contacting a nevelah, for instance, in that situation, a carcass of an animal, the laws incorporated in that is the observance of a mizvat aseh, a positive commandment. And so that will be the same case with all of the upcoming mizvot that the Rambam is going to list right now of tum'ah. So mizvot of tum'ah, starting with mizvah sadi zayin. I'm going to try to go through an entire list pretty quickly. It's one line each, just about. The idea that we become tameh to the 8 different types of rodents listed in the Torah, there is a more severe level of tum'ah contracted by he who was contact, dead or alive, by those rodents more than a regular nevelah, carcass of other types of animals. And therefore, this mizvah incorporates all of the different laws regarding the tum'ah of sheres, when one becomes tameh by being in contact to one of the 8 shirasim. Mizvah sadi het, number 98. Hishisivanu ladun betum'at ochalin umashkin hadinin hakitubim. So the next mizvah is the idea of the tum'ah of food and or drink. In other words, when something else tameh contacts a food or drink, they can become tameh from the Torah level. It's called rishon letum'ah. When an av hatum'ah, we're not going to go through here different laws of tum'ah, but just in general, basically, when something's called an av hatum'ah, for instance, someone who is tameh met, and there are other, I'll point them out as we go, which one's considered av hatum'ah, which is the higher level of contracting tum'ah, is in contact with food or drink. That food or drink becomes the next level, which is called first position, rishon letum'ah. So that's a mizvat aseh, observing those laws. Mizvat zo kolelet tum'at ochalim umashkin bechlalan. So this mizvah incorporates all laws of the impurity of food and drink. There are also rabbinical level the categories of impurity of food and drink. Mizvah Sadiktet, number 99. The idea that a woman who's nida, who's experiencing a menstrual cycle, is a nida, and she is tamteme'ah because of that. The following of those laws is a mizvah. This incorporates all the laws of the tum'ah status of a woman who's in nida. Mizvah Kof, number 100. The fact that a woman who gave birth to a boy or a girl, different amounts of days that she is teme'ah, either 7 or 14, respectively, but she is teme'ah. So this mizvah incorporates all the laws involved with the tum'as, impure status of a woman who has given birth. Mizvah Kof Aleph number 101. Hisha Sival Liot Misurah Tameh. Someone who contracts sarat is called a misurah, and he has a status of tum'ah. So now, by the way, let me just back up for a second. And nida is an av hatum'ah. So is a yoledet, and so is a misurah. Okay, all those in the categories of av hatum'ah. Umizvazo kolelet dine sarat adam, umash mimena tahor, umash mimena sricha hisger, or ena sricha. So included in this mizvah, as we read about in Parashat Tazria, is all the laws of sarat of a person. And there's 4 different types of sarat that a person can contract. And what type of blemish is tahor, is not tameh. And what type of blemish requires hisger, which means being closed up. He's sort of in a gray area, quasi status, where the kohen is deliberating as to his status of tum'ah. So he puts him keeps him in his house for 7 days. It's called hesked. Sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't. And when you sometimes might need, with the days of being in suspension, so to speak, those 7 days requires shaving or not. That would be specifically shaving. What's called the netek is one of the types of sarat, but that's specifically on the facial hair area. Besides that, all the other different specific laws and levels of tum'ah incorporated in the various types and situations of the Mesorah. Mizvah Kof Bet number 102. So the previous was a mizvah regarding the tum'ah status of a person who contracts sarat. This mizvah number 102 was regarding the tum'ah status of clothing that contracts sarat, also pointed out in Parashat Tazria. This incorporates all laws of impurity of clothing with the sarat disease, how they're tameh, how they make something else tameh, and in what situations the clothing would require closing up, in other words, being held in abeyance and suspension until we have clarification, or ripping, or burning, or washing, or purifying, and everything else that we know besides from the Pesukim explicitly in the Torah. That's what we received in the tradition of Torah Sheba'al Peh as well. Mizvah Kov Gimel number 103. Hisha Sivanu Lihiyot Bait or Bet Hamnuga Tameh. The mizvah of the other category of sarat, which is when a house contracts sarat. It's a smitten house, Bet Hamnuga, meaning the house that contracted a nega, blemish of sarat. So you have different mizvot regarding tumah of a person, clothing, and a house. That's in Parashat Mesorah. Tumat batim, ma mehem tzarich hesger, or l'natos chesat hakotlim, or l'natos kulo. Incorporated in this mizvah is in the impurity of houses when it requires closing. In other words, the deliberation of the kohen while it's held in abeyance. Sometimes it requires breakage of some of it, its wall, the area just of the blemish, or the breaking of the entire house. And with what it becomes tameh and how it becomes tameh, all that incorporated in this mizvah. Mizvah Kof Daled 104, Kisha Sivanu Lihiyot Hazab Tameh. We've discussed the Zab in the past regarding the korbanot that he brings. Zab is someone who has a seminal emission, a type of leakage from the private area of his body. Umizvazo kolelet, and he's tameh, and this is av hatumah. Mizvazo kolelet mishpat hadevarim sheyeh bahem zav. This includes any situation that makes a person a zav, and how, in that status, how we can make other things tameh. So, all these mizvot that we're naming as av hatumah, if they touch a person or a vessel, or food, becomes a rishon, the tum'ah, the first position after the av tum'ah, and only food, by the way, can become a sheni if the rishon tum'ah contacts something else, like a person or a vessel. It does not become tameh. But if they can make a food become a sheni, a second position tum'ah, and then with food, there's all other levels. Turuma and kadashim can become a shirishi, and the revi'i, a third and fourth position. Digress for a second just to mention that to you. Misvot Kofen number 105, a few more to go. The fact that semen, sperm, is tameh, meaning it itself, or a person who had an emission of it, is also tameh. And it's av hatuma, umuzvazo kolelet mishpatei shechvat zera, and all the laws that are incorporated in that. Misvot Kovav number 106. Right, so the flip side of the zab, the female, is a zabah. He interrupted in between shechvat zera because both of the emissions are from a man. A zabah is a blood emission for a woman, not during the time of her nidah, her menstrual cycle. Umizvazo kolelet dikduk hadevarim shebahem tiyeh zoba metame'ah zurata ahar shegi'a la hazibut. And this incorporates all the laws of how a woman who is a zabah can create tum'ah, can purify something else once she's in that status. Mizvah number Kov Zayin 107. Here, the Rambam frames it in a different way. He says the mizvah is for us to be engaged in the assessment and judgment of tum'at met, because tum'at met has a number of branches to it, and it incorporates not just contact, but vicinity or under a roofed area, incorporates different, components of the deceased, or someone who's in contact in the area of the deceased. When we say met, it's not just a full corpse. So therefore he framed it in that manner for us to deal with, to engage in those halachot. And this incorporates all the many halachot involved with impurity of a deceased. And that's called, and met is called avi avot hatum'ah, which is the level above the highest level of tum'ah, so to speak. And the met makes other people av hatum'ah. And finally, Mizvah Kov Het. Number 108. Menida, ironically, it does not mean the woman who's nidah, or waters of purity. The Torah commanded us about the laws of the waters of purity, and that's basically the waters that inserted into them the ashes of the burnt para aduma, inserted in water and then sprinkled to make someone, as we'll say now, she'amru she'yitaharu ba'anyan ehad yitamu ba'anyan acher. So in other words, he's not saying it, but I'll say it. When someone who contracts tum'ah tameh met of the deceased, his mode of purification is by sprinkling upon him the third and seventh day of his impurity from this menida, these pure waters, and incorporates, says the Rambam, how sometimes some people's it purifies, and ironically, some people the menida makes tameh. The people that are actually using it to purify other people become tameh, ironically, so that those laws are incorporated as well. So now what the Rambam's going to do, and we're going to save for next time, but I'll just give you a little foresight, and that is he says these 13 types of tum'ah that we just listed, he'll go back over them. He'll then talk about where they can be found, in which parashiot in the Torah, and in which masechtot of Gemara and Mishnah, and give a nice overview of these 13 levels of tum'ah, 11 of which, 12 we just read now, and one from yesterday, the Nevera. Those are the 13 different levels of tum'ah that Rambam will refer to. We'll stop here for now. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.